So welcome to episode 13. In this particular episode, we're going to correct some overflow of problems that we had in episode 12. We're also going to look at scrolling. So we've got our detail scrolling with inside our sticky note. And we're also going to create a brand new component, which is going to act as a reusable button, which we're going to apply onto the UI. So without further ado, let's get into the video and let's get cracking. So in episode 12, we had a little bit of a problem with inside our application. You can see here that the text appears to be overflowing the constrained area that we actually have with inside our components. So we need to make some adjustments in Flutterflow to allow our text to actually wrap in that particular area of the component. So let's go over to Flutterflow and let's correct that now. Okay, so if we were not using the conditional builder widget, our problem will be the same if we were using rows and columns in terms of telling our rows and columns to use the most available space available to those particular widgets. We have the same problem with the conditional builder. So if we never had the conditional builder and you looked at the note description row, typically what you would do is you would come here and you go to the right hand side and you would select this expansion option, which then allows the widget to then use all of the available space. That's what you would do with rows and columns. Now, the conditional builder widget has its own setting for expansion. So if we move to the actual conditional builder, you can see here that we've also got these options here to use the minimum does not fill all of the available space. Or we got this one here to choose all of the available space that it's actually got at a parent level. So we can choose this, and you'll see when I select this, you can see here that this particular area here expands out. So I just select that and do that. You can see here we would be getting the same effect if we were handling rows and columns. So what we need to do here is we need to tell this to use all of the available space. Now what that now means is that our note description text, when our text is then oversized, it would then actually wrap that down to the next line. So with that set, let's quickly go back into test mode and let's quickly just make sure that plays out for us. Okay, so here we go then with a reload. Let's see what we get, and perfect. We're getting all of that wrapped text, which is just what we want now. So there's a couple of other little corrections that we need to make. If I go to this one here and I edit this and I just put some more text in here, like that. So you can see here we're now getting this overflow as I keep typing and typing and typing. So we now need to correct that. We now need to turn our actual parent column now actually to be scrollable. So let's go and do that now. Okay, so earlier then we built out a column that was called note description scrollable. Now with that selected, we didn't make it scrollable at that particular time. Now this is a column. You can apply scrolling to both columns and rows, and in this case it's a column. So on the right hand side, you just need to select this scrollable option, which now is really just meaning that anything that we put inside that particular column will now have the scrollable behavior, and we can then not going to get those overflow issues that we saw just a moment ago. Now of course you can use you can do the same technique with rows as well if you want everything to be horizontally scrolled or vertically in our case, which is what we've got. Now you'll also notice here that we've got this option that's been enabled called primary. Now the way that you need to think about that is that if you are if you're building an application, say like a mobile application for example, and you've got the most dominant part of your UI is scrollable, then generally that's what you would mark as primary. But sometimes you might then decide to have scrollable widgets within other scrollable widgets. You want to make sure that you don't choose primary when you are nesting scrollable widgets within inside each other, because what that will do is that will almost confuse the UI a little bit. It will probably get some of these really undesired behaviors within inside the UI. So although you can nest scrollable regions, then you know that by choosing primary, you want that to be the most dominant part of your application to be deemed as scrollable. So ideally, you would probably just want to have one primary scrollable region, and then the other ones would have that primary toggle turned off in most cases. So that's pretty well much it. So if I now go back to the test mode again, let's fire this up. Let's actually just see if then we see that we remove those overflow issues. Let's quickly check that now. Okay, so test mode loaded. Let's just see if this now works for us. There we go. Brilliant. So we've got our scrollable area there. And remember back a little while ago, I said to you about nesting columns of inside columns. And what I've done is I put the scrollable column more on the outer edge. And then I brought everything then with inside it. And that means that this scroll bar here won't be down here and getting in the way and really being hard up to the edge of the actual text. So trying to make sure it's pushed right out. And that's why now the scroller now appears just on the outside of the a sticky note. And of course, this one has not, there's no overflow kind of happening here to some extent. So of course, you're not getting that scrolling sort of area activated. So I think we're all in a good position there. Now let's there's one little correction that we need to go back to our UI and make, because if I now toggle this between kind of edit and the text mode, you'll see here that it just kind of jumps about a little bit. We want to make sure that kind of our behavior with inside our sticky note remains very, very consistent. I think there might be just a little bit of padding correction that we need to do there to kind of correct that problem. So let's go and let's see if we can address that now. So the problem is all coming around in this particular area, the conditional builder. When we kind of flick between a kind of an edit mode and a non-edit mode, this particular text here is not perfectly positioned to where the actual note description text field is. So what we need to do is with inside the note description text, we just need to go to the padding and we just need to drop this down by 4, just like that. And that just brings it down just slightly. So when we now then toggle between those two modes, we then should see the text absolutely filled in a perfect place. We also want to make a little adjustment here with inside the note description text field, and this is really just more of a visual thing. If I just switch the little eye here and just choose the note description text field, if I just scroll down here, there is an option here where we can change the color of the actual the kind of the cursor, the flashing sort of a caret that we've kind of got there. So you can see here that we've got this option for the cursor color, so you can just select that and we can now make a little change. So because we're predominantly working with white here, we can just choose the cursor color and we can just choose this informational option here. Just select that. That will kind of make it white now when it's flashing. So let's quickly now go back into the test mode. Let's quickly give that a quick test. Okay, so in test mode then, if I hit the little pencil here, you can now see I've got that nice white flashing cursor. Then I can come along and I can type a little bit more, hit enter. That's now saved back to application state. I can hit the edit option again, and of course my cursor will then carry on sort of showing its thing. So that's pretty good. If I, on this side here, if I probably hit the little edit, you'll probably find that my cursor will probably go down to the bottom. There it goes. And I can now carry on typing away, hit enter, hit the little cursor again, and the cursor is then back in that position. So that's looking good, really good. At the moment, we're not really seeing much visual difference here between whether we're in edit mode or we're not, other than the little cursor being presented. We need to correct that. We need to kind of hide the actual edit button here and return that to almost to another icon where you can then just hit it again as a little check there to then save that back to the application state. We will come in on and do that very, very shortly. What we're going to do though next is we're just going to kind of work on this little edit sort of button here. We're going to kind of make that look a little bit more standout than what it is at the moment. So let's move back over and do that now. Okay, so here's a running application. Let's have a little think about something that we can reuse here. So this button is definitely something that we can reuse, because when you, in this application, we just hit the little sort of edit, we can then turn it into this kind of, this more like tick kind of button itself. So it's really kind of a button under the covers. It's got the same kind of behavior. You kind of move the mouse over and expands and contracts. The only difference really about it is the fact it's got an icon, it's a different color, and it has the opacity set. Now we can set the component parameters up to handle that for us, and we can apply the action to the overall button in the first place. So let's now go over and create this reusable component, which we'll then style up and use in the right point of our application when we go into edit mode and we come out of edit mode. So let's go over and start that now. Okay, so within the node component, down the left-hand side, we've got the edit icon here. This is what we're going to convert to a component very, very shortly. But with the edit icon selected, we're just going to go to the actions, because we're going to kind of cut these out of here and we're going to use these and apply these to the component in just a moment. So just move up to the 3 dots here and just select the cut action chain, this one here. Just select that. And of course, all of those actions will disappear. We can close that down. We can go now to our edit icon, make sure it's selected, and just right click and say convert to component. Just select that. And we're going to give our component a name. Once Overflow sorted itself out, there we go. I'm going to call this one circle button component, just like that, and hit create component. I'm just going to go back to the actual note component itself. I'm going to move down here with the circle button component. With that selected, just go to the actions, open up the action flow editor, and we're just going to paste those actions in. So we've got them all back in place, because it's going to be the component now that's going to take the on tap event for that action. So we don't need to do any callbacks in this particular example. So just hit close there, and that's all in place. With that circle button component selected, let's just give our component a name. I'm just going to call this edit button just like that. And we could put a component on the end, but this is really just a button at the end of the day, so that's fine. And now let's move over to the components. In fact, let's just move the circle button component into the components folder just like that, and now select the circle button component. So now this is where we now need to get busy now and start working on the widget tree on the left hand side. So what we're going to do first, with the circle button component selected, let's start creating our parameters. Now remember, our parameters here are going to be, we're going to need an icon itself, so just select the type there to be an icon. This is going to be required, so we can just say add parameter. Now this is now going to be a color, so let's just select the type there, and of course just need to look for color there like that. Now let's take the required off, because we're going to give this kind of like a default sort of parameter value. So we're just going to choose anything here. We're just going to kind of just maybe just select like a white or something like that. Just hit use color like that. And then we're going to add another parameter here. Just hit add parameter. And this time we're going to set one up for the opacity. We're going to kind of make this, give this the option to go semi-transparent. Now the type we're going to just select here, and we're going to select this to be a double. So just choose double at the top there. And that double is going to, we'll just take the required off, but this double is going to allow us to then set this default parameter. Now we're going to set 0.2 as the default parameter. So certainly if we don't pass any parameters in, then it's going to just use 0.2. Just hit confirm there, and that's all of our parameters set up. So we'll come back and we'll apply those parameters very, very shortly. But let's start now working on our widgets on the left-hand side. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to kind of wrap our edit icon button in a nice circular container. So with this one selected here, just right-click, and we're going to say wrap widget here, and we're going to choose a container here. Now let's just make this a little bit bigger. You probably can't see too much, but I'm just going to zoom in for a second. Now with our container selected, let's give our container a name. So I'm going to call this one circle button container, just like that. So circle buttons are going to have any other parameters applied to it, because we're going to be animating that very, very shortly. We're going to kind of increase the size of it and reduce it. Okay, so we'll come back to that very shortly. Now let's move over to the edit icon here. Okay, so let's now just wrap this edit icon. So just hit the wrap here. Now what we're going to do, we're going to wrap this now with a stack. And the reason why we're doing a stack is because underneath the icon, we're going to create this kind of circular, kind of sort of semi-transparent kind of circle. So with that selected, we can just go to the edit icon here. We can right click on that, say wrap widget, and we're now going to add a container in. Let's give our container a name up here. So we're going to call this one icon container, just like that. Hit the little check there. And we're just going to move down here. Let's give this some parameters here, or some properties. So we're just going to choose the circular shape option. Let's give this a diameter of 40, just like that. And then what we need to do is we need to add a brand new container here on the stack. So this is the one that's going to be just underneath the actual icon itself. So just hit the little plus here, choose container, and we're just going to move this container. So we just hold the left mouse button and you can just drag this up here and just let that go there, and it will just appear just within underneath the stack. So with that, on the right hand side, we just need to give this a name. So I'm just going to call this one opaque container, just like that. Just hit the check there, and then down here we're just also going to give this a width. In fact, just choose the uniform circular shape there. Let's just give this also a diameter of 40, and then the background, this is where we need to change now the fill color. So just with the fill color selected, we just need to go up here, and this is where we now need to choose the component parameter. This is the color that we're going to set by passing it in as a parameter. So just choose a color, the actual color like that, and then that is everything that we need set there. So let's just scroll up here now with the opacity. We need to select this now because of course we're going to pass in that parameter value again. Just choose opacity just like that. So that's now all selected. If I just click away here, you can now see that icon nicely positioned just in the middle there. So I'm not going to see anything here, but at least it gives you an idea here of kind of how everything is starting to play out. You're not going to see that opacity applied until we actually run this application. So we just need to change this here. This is called edit icon. We need to change that. Let's give this a name. It's not really an edit anymore. Let's just call this one, say, button icon, something like that. Just hit the little check there. Let's give it a bit more of a consistent name there for everything else that this might be then used. So just with our button icon selected, let's now apply the component parameter to the icon. So we can go down here, we've got this icon properties option here, just select that and we can just choose the icon. So anything that we can configure outside of this we're passing in, then this icon will then be, will pick up all of those parameters. So that's all set nicely for us. Now we just need to do now one more thing. We now need to create this animation now, because we're going to kind of expand and contract it as we said earlier. So let's now apply the animation. So we're going to apply the animation here to the actual the circle button container. So with this selected, just move over to the animations here on the right hand side, go to an on trigger animation, hit the add animation. Now this is going to be a scale. So this is going to be very, very similar to kind of what we did before. So with our final scale, we're just going to increase it by 10%. So we're just going to put 1.1 in there and just choose 1.14 there as well. And you'll just see now that I just kind of just sort of move up and sort of move out and then back in again. So we're just going to change the duration down to say 300 like that. Just going to reduce the speed of it. So that's all in place. And of course we can now trigger that particular animation. So how are we going to do that? Well, our circular button container, we can now right click and we can now wrap this widget now with a mouse region. If I can find it, there it is, mouse region, just select that, and then we can now apply the actions that we need to in order to perform that. So just with the action selected, just do that there, hit the open, and we can say this is the on mouse enter. So as we move the mouse in, of course, hit the add action. We're just going to do a search for say animation, like anim, like that, and say widget animation, and of course we choose the widget and it's our circular button container. Just with that selected, we're going to start the animation, and on the mouse exit we're just going to copy this action like that, go to on mouse exit, let's paste that action in here with the widget with that selected. We can then just reverse that animation just as we've done previously through this series. So just choose reverse animation, hit close like that, and that is all good. Now of course we've got a little error up here to see what that's telling us here. The circle button widget does not specify a value for the parameter icon. That's fine because we're not passing in that component parameter. Of course we can do that. So with that selected, let's move back to the note component like that. You can see here it's going to look pretty ghastly at the moment because we've kind of got that white background. But if I just move down here, we've got the edit button here. Just with that selected, we can then go to the properties here, move down here, and we can now set some of these values. So the icon, if we just select that. Now if you remember, this was like an edit or something like that. It was like an edit pencil here. We can just choose this one here on the right hand side, edit outline. That's now applied. We don't need to set any of these other parameters. It's going to be pretty standard for us. With the color, again, it's going to be white there by default, but the opacity, in fact, we set it as 0.2 as a default, so we don't even need to set a value for that here. So that is pretty good. We can probably quickly spin this up now in test mode, and let's see how this is working for us. Okay, so in test mode, you can see quite nicely our button has kind of got that semi kind of transparent look. So we know that our opacity parameter value is being picked up. We've got the white icon in the middle, which is great. And then of course, as I just move my mouse over, you can see that the animations are playing out as well. Now we applied the actions onto the actual button component itself. So we should be able to click on that now and we should get the same behavior as we've got before, which is great. That is brilliant. What we now need to do is we now need to kind of go down the reusability approach. Now we're going to create another instance of that particular component. We're going to style that up to represent the point where we are now into that edit mode, and we would just want to hit the save, and then it can revert back to that particular component. So let's now go over to Flutterflow itself and let's go and make those changes now. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways that we can bring a duplicate in. We can right click on the component and we can duplicate it. Just going to show you a quick another way here. With the note button row selected, we're going to add this additional component. You can hit the little plus here and we can hit on the little diamonds, and then you can see here, this is a list of all of our kind of components. You can see here we've now got our circle button component there. So you just select that and you'll see it will create a brand new instance of our actual component. Let's just change the name up here of it. We're just going to call this one update button, just like that. And we can go down here. We can now change some of the characteristics with the icon. With that selected, let's look for one for check to represent a little tick. There we go. We can take any one of these. That top one, would be great. Now with our actual opacity, we're now going to set this as 1.0. We're going to make this a solid color, and we're going to choose the color itself to be maybe our secondary option, just with that selected. And you can see that we can now see that nicely on the UI. Now once that's all in place, what we can now do is we can now, this is where we now need to put some conditional builder around these particular buttons here, because what we're going to do is we're clearly going to want to display or hide these based on whether the actual sticky note is in edit mode or not. So let's do that now. So with the edit button selected, let's right click and we're going to say wrap widget, and we're going to choose the conditional builder option, which is just here. Choose that, and then you can see that we've got that in there. Now we just need to put the little eye on there for our false. We can just move our update button just into there as well, and it just drops it in between the two. So we've now can interchange there by just selecting the eye. We now need to put some conditions on here, of course. That's just with that selected on the right hand side, we now to set our first condition. Now of course we want to display this if we are in edit mode, so with this selected here, just choose that, and we can go to conditions and we can do a single condition and select our first value and just select that. Now our first value is going to be a part of the component state, because we're obviously in a component here, so just with that selected, we've got this is edit mode. So just with that selected, we can just move down here with it being set, and we can say only display this if we are not in the edit mode. So that will remain as itself. So if it is edit mode equals false, then that is good enough. So just hit the confirm there, and of course else is just going to display the update button, which will just be just like that. So that's our condition nicely in place. So we can just quickly just test that out within test mode just to make sure that that behavior is working for us. So let's do that now. There we go. So we just move over to the pen now, select that, and you'll see that we've now got the tick. Now, of course, it's not what's not going to work for us now, of course, if we hit this, because this won't revert back. It won't sort of toggle that value back. So we're going to go and apply the action now to do that. But at least you can see now that our check is now being displayed. So let's move back over to Overflow. Let's go and correct that now. So all that we now need to do is take actually the actions we've created before. Do you remember when we had the note description text field and we kind of typed something and then we hit the enter key on the keyboard? We're just going to take all of those actions and apply those to this particular button. So with that selected, hit open, and we're going to copy this action chain here. So say copy action chain just like that, close that down, move over to our update button. Let's go to the actions themselves, and then click open on the action flow editor, and we can just paste all these actions in because the behavior is exactly the same. We just want to update our application state with the sticky note that we're making adjustments to. And of course, we've got the execute callback here to obviously then rebuild the application state for us to then see those changes. So just hit close there, and I think we are in a good position. So if we now go back up to test mode, we should see the behavior that we need. Okay, so here we are in test mode. Let's hit the edit here. That's great. We've got our little check there. We can carry on typing like that, hit the check again, and of course we're back into then the non-edit mode. If I hit that again, then we're back and we can carry on typing. And remember, everything is then being saved back to the application state. So there you go. Hopefully you enjoyed this particular episode. We've corrected some problems along the way, and we've made really good progress with our user interface. So as always, please do like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well if you're not already a member. And of course, if you aren't a member of the Digital Pros Nocode Academy, please do check the link in the description. It'd be great to have you part of the community and to hopefully learn a lot more about using Overflow and surrounding technologies as well. So until the next episode, I'll see you soon.